I've started applying the tiles here. You can see on the pan tiles, I'm just nailing right through them. I'm not using a wire. And I'm using a nail that the head is small enough to pass through the hole in the tile. So if I want to replace the tile, I can just lift it off. And that is not a positive attachment. I do not recommend that anybody do that. You know, if wind came along, you could lift that tile up, it could come down off the roof and hit somebody. You know, in my installation, I have low wind. You know, the winds don't ever get that strong here, and it's not that far down to the ground. So that's just what I'm doing. I'm attaching these cap tiles with the 045 welding wire, and that's just nailed in there with a slightly larger headed stainless steel nail, ring shank nail. You can see in these pan tiles that to lift the first course up the way it needs to be on the correct angle, it's if there was a course under it. Of course there isn't, since it's the first course. But to lift it up, they usually have you nail a strip on there under the tar paper, but I just cut a small piece of tile and adhere it to the bottom of that pan tile. Here's one up here, you can see it. I just stuck it on there with some silicone, and that's the spacer. You can see here on the bottom of these cap tiles where I've cut a little notch with an angle grinder, and that's to get the water to drip off there into the gutter that's going to be there. Otherwise, it's an amazing phenomenon to watch the water. It'll run all the way down from the ridge of the roof down the bottom edge of each cap tile, and it'll just keep going. You have to see it to believe it. So this little notch forces that water to drip off instead of giving it a continuous edge to run down. You can begin to get a picture of what it's going to look like. Note that none of the tiles have been cut. They're all full length, including these eave tiles. The pan tiles are full length, the cap tiles are full length. It'll look even better when I get the gutter under there. You can see the detail on the barge rafter tiles. I've got a piece of stainless steel wire wrapped around there. It's something that, I mean, it's right out in the open, you can see it, but it doesn't really draw your attention to it. So I think it looks all right, and it's really strong. Here you can see it from the side. I'll try to get some better angles on it. On the very end, I notched into that piece of sheet metal there, and the wire wraps around, tying it all together. You can see I had to put a little piece of tile in there on the starter course to get the angle of the tile right. Here's the view from above. These are actually number 14 by 3.5 inch long stainless steel deck screws that I got from Albany County Fasteners. And I drilled down through, and you know, such a big screw it'll split the wood, so I pre-drilled it. Then I put a bunch of this gutter lap sealant on so it'll seal in there tight when the screw gets tightened down. Here's the wire prepared for the next tile. It just sits under this tile and it butts up against that screw. It can't slide down further because it's putting up against that screw there. Then when the next tile goes on, I'll wrap it around and tie it like these others. Nothing fancy. Use a long drill bit to pre-drill that hole so it'd be straight through. So when I put the screw in, it wouldn't realign the tile. You know, I put the tile in there and drilled it. That way my alignment was correct. Here's a nice number 14 by 3.5 stainless steel deck screw. It's not going to bend. Here's a pan tile nail. And there's a cap tile nail. The cap tile nail has a little bigger head. Here's a cap tile nail in place. Pan tile nail. I just used the straight edge for this particular roof because it's not a very wide roof. Chalk line is really the right way to do it. Here's a look at the ridge. I just have to leave myself a little area to step, so I can only put the cap tiles on after I put the very two top pan tiles on. So the cap tiles are just laying there with the wires ready to go. Here's the start over here. Here's a closer look at how the ridge is going to go together. Pan tiles go on. They're not really fastened, they're just sitting there. Siliconed at the joint, the top. They have to be dry before I can silicone them, so I cut them yesterday, let them dry. There's the two cap tiles. Then here's a ridge tile. I had to cut about 4 inches off of it. It was a little too long, it was going to hang out too far. If you take the top surface of that ridge tile, it comes in on a line with the top of those two cap tiles. Or you can just hold another tile on top of it and see how it planes out. So it's all kind of self-regulating. You just put it together so that everything will fit tight. There's some wires running through there, some tie wires. They'll come out of the mortar and tie down the ridge tile. Those will be a regular feature. They kind of go through the tie wire on those two pans. So there'll be one, every, whatever my spacing was, I'm trying to remember, 10.5 or 11 inches, which will end up being the exposure of the ridge tile. Here's a look at the ridge as it progresses. I'm not using any kind of a straight line. I'm just taking these pan tiles, centering them on the ridge, taking the cap tiles, centering them over the pan tiles, and then I'm centering the ridge tiles over that. So it's a little squiggly. I don't think you can see it from the ground. All in all, I don't see how the ridge could deviate more than 1/2 inch in either direction off of its exact geometric line. Here's a look at this wire is just temporarily tied together here. I'll undo it, and when I put the ridge tile over it, wrap it around the next ridge tile. These wires are permanent. I put the wire to one side. It's the back side of the ridge where it won't be seen under normal circumstances. Put a nice coat of silicone on, more than just in between, kind of a lap over each side. If you're installing a roof in an area with higher winds, you need to get some sort of positive attachment of these stainless steel tie wires where they're attached directly to the roof deck. There's a few twists and turns. All in all, for my purposes, the ridge is straight enough. Like I said, I'm just using the way that the pan and cap tiles naturally lie as my gauge of where to run the ridge, rather than having a line that I'm working to. Here's another look at these wires that I'm wiring on these ridge tiles with. I got the roof wrapped up now. You can see the ridge here. Part of what I'm trying to do here is get something that looks good and works well. And the way I've got this put together is all the cap tiles have pretty much the same exposure, top and bottom. And that looks pretty good from a distance. The pan tiles are also all the same exposure, except for the very top pan tile. But all in all, pretty sharp looking roof. On the eaves here, I've got the cap tiles running out 4.5 inches over the pans. And it looks kind of funky right now. But once I get the gutters on there, it looks great. The visual discontinuity just kind of gets hidden. Maybe you can see how all the cap tile exposures are the same. Here's the gable end. I'll plaster that shower board, just put a layer of color coat on it. You can see the wires. They don't impose themselves on your field of vision. They're there if you look for them. Of course, another advantage of these shower board gable ends is that they're very fire resistant. There's bituthene. It's supposed to be a little more curved up under that that piece of pressure treated there. You can see the sheet metal, which runs by about 1.25 inches past the edge of the pressure treated board. The shower board that runs by 1.5 inches or so. Here's a look at the other side. It's just a 2x4 toenailed up under that roof deck. The lathing and stuff is going to be unique to each situation. I've kind of got a weird installation here, so I don't really see where you'd want to copy this lathing necessarily. Here's a look at the underside of the eaves after I've got the rip lath on. This is nothing fancy. Also, I'm not a lath expert. I just did what I wanted to do. You know, there should probably be a piece of corner metal in there, right in there. It's like, whatever, I'll get a crack. So the lathing here I'm showing is more conceptual than, you know, suggesting anybody actually do it exactly this way. Yeah, I shot in with screws just because I don't have a stapler. So, but you can get the general idea of how the whole system goes together. Sheet metal runs by 3/4 inch under the rib lath, and then the 1/2 inch concrete board goes down 1/2 inch below the edge of the sheet metal. So, you know, you'll get a chance to see what it all looks like once I get it plastered and color coded. Here's some steel gutters I got at Lowe's, painted white. They're nothing special, it's just what I could get. And here's the gutter area. I'm going to paint that galvanized metal white before I put the white gutters on. Here's the clip. It's a gutter system, just whatever they had at Lowe's. Nothing fancy. Here's the finished product. You can see how these barge rafters look. The cement board with color coat just applied directly to it. Much more fire resistant. Hopefully never need to be painted. Just color coated cement. Here's the gutter system. This clip system that I got at Lowe's doesn't work too well with the overhanging tiles. You can't really get the gutter to clip in without kind of twisting it in there, so I did just twist it in there. I suppose you could just lift those tiles up, although the end tiles don't lift up very well. It worked. It wasn't too bad. There's another system that you can just screw it directly in the face and you wouldn't have that problem. So you can kind of get a feel for the appearance. The tiles looked much too long before. They were, you know, they're equal length tiles, the cap and the pan tiles. There's no short cap tiles here out on the edge like you'd normally expect.